Welcome back to the Privateers Abridged. Last time we had some trouble with the vampires' heavy cavalry. We fought tons of battles with them, making no progress, but just making our life a little bit better against them. We'll come back to that, of course. And we fought a siege attack against the Tahar Caliphate, which was pretty disastrous, although we did win in the end. Now we need to clear up the Tahar's Jihad army, which is not quite besieging the Jihad target, but we're going to stop them anyway. In this case, we have allies who are sallying out of the fort that was under siege. These guys are, as usual, a bit of a liability. I shouldn't have brought them in, really. I thought they'd be useful by making a rear attack, but they attacked too much and started getting the general killed. Here's me trying to get them to disengage, putting them on defensive mode and ordering the face up the top to move away. Sometimes makes the army do stuff. In this case, it appears not to do anything, but we tried. Need to actually pay some attention to our fight because the enemy are charging us right now, pretty much the standard setup, although in this battle in particular I have some sacrificial Mesotech infantry out front just to absorb stuff. You can see the enemy have this floating boat over their elephants. Not sure if that's going to help them, perhaps it stops arrows, not really sure what's going on there. But as usual, we need to prioritize taking down those elephants while they're just standing there shooting at us. We use some pirates to screen a little bit of safe passage for the grenadiers to get close to the elephants. And they indeed do start to bring them down, but that loose formation proves a bit hard to hit. Along the rest of the line, just the usual grind. There's nothing too dangerous in there, so I'm not paying any attention to it. Trying to help my allies with a bit of micro at the back. And there we go, we kill their general with our grenadiers. The elephants run amok, and of course morale will be down across the board. The amok elephants come in real useful actually because they run right into this huge blob of various skirmishing troops and troops that were in reserve that weren't committed. So that's some more enemies killed as a result, although we are going to have to deal with those amok elephants ourselves as we advance up to try and attack those enemies. We've kind of won the battle at this point, even though the balance bar is still even. We just need to surround and pound everything. The stuff on the front line starts to withdraw, and now I am going to focus down those elephants with a whole bunch of ranged units to get them out of the way, and it turns out these axe-throwing braves are pretty good actually. They're more reliable about actually throwing than the grenadiers, and they do seem to do the job as well. Then all the not routed stuff on the field was pretty much just archers, so I need to chase them around. Here's me taking out some heavy infantry with a nice two-sided attack. I'll have cancelling their charge annoyingly to shoot instead. But it does the job, I suppose. Once routing units get shot, I think they still count as being captured in the game's logic, which is very nice of the game. There's the result. We're fine really, and the jihading army is dead. Although we don't want to leave because of course the jihad will still be on, so someone else might show up here. Therefore, we'll just sit in the castle and wait in case that happens. Now we're going to open up a new front, well a little bit of a front. I'm going to attack this settlement that somehow, throughout the entire campaign, has not been captured by anyone. There were some rebels next to where we started in the middle of the map. I had committed to never bothering to attack over here, but since everyone else appeared to never bother attacking them either, I figured we might as well start working on taking that place. It's heavily garrisoned, and I'm just going to siege them out. Up in Vampire Land, I wanted to try and do something offensive here. I wanted to walk around the armies that are still all over the place in front of us and go for some of the armies that are all over the place in the next region over, because I figured we might be able to get some kind of siege draw out going the way they are set up. The only problem is each possible siege draw out has another army in a position to reinforce it. I wasn't really aware of this. I came in here thinking this battle will only be reinforcing with stuff from the right and therefore it's fine. Maybe I was thinking because the enemy army here is technically next to me, it doesn't count as being in this battle. This isn't how it works, although in my defense it is sometimes, as we'll see later actually. So in this case, I don't want to do a siege draw out where there's a full stack of reinforcements coming in from another direction as well. But now I'm kind of stuck there because you can't withdraw from a battle's location. All I can do is commit by putting my reinforcement army also nearby. I thought what I could do is use the reinforcement army to fight the bigger army here. The problem now is we get an anti-siege draw out, where what I'd be doing is accidentally killing the force that I need to use for a siege draw out. Overall then, not ideal. So I cancelled that battle as well, and ended up just kind of standing there and doing nothing this turn, which is the story of how we come to be standing in this awkward position, and we'll come back to that once the enemy get involved. In the meantime, we've got some stuff to do against the Tahar Caliphate. They have armies sitting around the castle I took so costily last time. I thought I'd try and clear some of them out, but here was another case where I was surprised to see an enemy reinforcement army was on the field. Although we can get around it by cancelling the battle and then sallying out of the castle and using night attack to fight only the weaker of the two armies. I thought that bringing cannons to this fight would give me an advantage against their many elephants. I thought we could snipe them, but their position was just on the other side of a little mound on top of a hill, meaning I couldn't really see them. And when I got close enough to start firing, they started charging at me, and the cannons, they're as janky as gunners, they're going to take a long time to do anything, and their guys literally move in slow motion. So it's not going to happen, and that's quite a lot of elephants coming towards us right now. We're potentially in a lot of trouble. Our advisor seems to think this is all fine, but they do start rampaging through our front lines. Luckily, they're in a big blob, and they're not all charging us very effectively. In fact, most of them are doing nothing but throw javelins at us. We've got our unit of grenadiers in the right position to start killing them. If they really committed, I think we'd be in enormous trouble, but actually it's okay. They're getting hit by a lot of gunfire, arrows and grenades, so we're taking them down. The cannons might be doing something. Not quite sure. I guess they're likely enough to hit if they do fire into that elephant blob. But somewhere we killed their general really early on, and we can see it causes a mass rout among all the elephants that haven't been committed yet, which is most of them. So actually we get away with being flattened, only a part of the line was flattened, and things suddenly turn around. I went out after the elephants trying to kill them before they came back from routing, which they did a couple of times, but shooting at them caused enough morale shock to get them to reroute after that, so we didn't really have that much trouble, other than the fact a couple of them ran amok and things like that, the usual stuff. But it's happening, the balance bar is now really far in our favour. There is other fighting going on, as you can see, but a lot of their army is the classic archer spam, so all I'm really doing is just chasing them towards the edges of the map and trying to commit them into melees. Once we get them going, those will be fine, and usually they're going to rout as well at this late stage in the battle. I didn't do a very good job of chasing them off the map as they routed and stuff, because I was distracted, trying to watch the elephants, making sure nothing was going wrong, and seeing if we could get some more of them while they were still routing. Not just to stop them from not routing, but because we might still have to fight them in a future battle, because we haven't devastated the enemy army in this fight. There's no guarantee of getting the proportion needed to delete their stack. So I do my best. I ended up trying to block the elephants from leaving the map with infantry, but they just stamped through the infantry, so after taking some casualties, we did not do that anymore. But we still grabbed plenty of extra kills. Here's the final result. It was actually really good, especially given what the balance bar was when we started that fight, and as a result we go on to immediately auto-resolve against the other army that would have reinforced previously, and that's that. Now the situation around here is looking a bit better. I'm going to effectively ignore the other army, because we have the opportunity now to go on the offensive. I've already spied out a nearby settlement to go after. We'll leave one army behind and take most of an army to attack nowhere other than Naboo. That's the thing this mod is missing, I suppose, a Star Wars faction. This is as good as it will get. We set the place to siege, but immediately they actually sally out. And here's that example I mentioned from earlier. The AI probably thought that when they sallied to attack me, the stack standing next to me would reinforce, but no, it doesn't. I'm guessing because with sallies, the reinforcements are taken from around the settlement, not around the target of the attack, which is the case for normal attacks. Something, something, something. Let's fight this battle, because this is actually a pretty cheeky siege drawout that we've been gifted by the game. They had no particular strategy, they just ran right at us, so we'll receive them. In this case, I'm actually microing some pikes to stop the enemy's mounted troops attacking our front line of pirates. That rarely actually happens. Clearly I had enough time to micro it in this fight because it was happening in isolation, but there we go, a bit of optimal play. Those camels won't last too long. Looks like most of their other stuff is kind of focusing on my right flank, perhaps being attracted towards those gunners. Maybe they want to kill them first. I've tried putting the gunners off on the flank so they'll be able to shoot for more of the battle, but yes, it's causing the enemy to not attack the middle, which maybe isn't a very good trade-off, because them attacking the middle makes them easy to surround. Still, they're pretty easy to surround as it stands. We can just charge at them with everything and get this going. And here they are, pretty surrounded. Their general's going to try and get out of there. A good idea as we kill everything else. You can also see I've sent my left flank to go up right to the back towards the enemy walls, not only to drive back archers and such, but I want to have something between the battlefield and the gate the enemy will use to go to the capture point, just so that we can stop them from being alive in order to achieve the siege drawout, and in the more short term from coming back from routing by touching the capture point and then just coming back outside. Their general's bodyguards, who are somewhat hard to kill, are now going to get taken down by this grenade attack while they're actually not really doing very much. Their unit's very ineffectively formed up, so most of the units doing nothing while they die. Perfect. They do escape from that situation, but then in comes this rear attack from our gun cav. That routs the general. I think we also captured the general immediately after this, and really that's the battle. Although it goes on because a few guys had made it to the capture point, so we had to then go into the town and kill the last like 5 guys, which took a surprisingly long time. And then we win. So by killing everything, we have at least made sure that the siege drawout thing will have been a success. We have very cheekily taken Naboo from under the Tahar Caliphate's noses. They can now sit outside the walls and wonder what went wrong. Now it's time for the Dracul turn. We've got another siege starting among our many bases, but more importantly, they're coming in to attack the stuff we've left awkwardly standing outside their other settlement. Now this battle that starts here isn't the best because we're fighting all sorts of different armies at once. I ended up withdrawing from this fight. I thought I wouldn't be able to withdraw actually, but I could withdraw. But then there was like this 2-minute period where the enemy just sort of stood there looking at me, moving their other units about for ages, and they eventually actually came back to challenge us after we retreated to essentially the same battle, but actually perhaps a bit worse because they're attacking our smaller army primarily, meaning I have to give most of my troops over to the AI or not have some of them, and I would like them all because we're being attacked by quite a lot of stuff, so I probably should have taken the first fight, but that's just how we roll. We're sort of Iron Manning it, we're Bronze Manning it, except when the auto-resolves annoy me. The first thing we need to do in this fight is get our 2 armies together. I need to direct my reinforcements to run towards the edge of the map with the fewest enemies there, then direct my main force to get there and try to link up. This does mean we can run towards the best position on the map where the hills are highest, and that will also slow the enemy down coming after me. So with any luck we can link up without fighting surrounded or anything too bad. And as it happens, it all works out. The enemy took ages forming up and coming up the hill after us, so we do have all of our stuff together in a good position before the battle gets started. I was also doing some annoying harassing with my horse archers. We don't want to commit too heavily to this because if the enemy really stopped and started shooting back, we'd probably lose. There are plenty of skirmishers coming up the hill towards us. So I ended up running away pretty much as soon as any resistance was offered. But this is pretty good since the enemy do chase me up the hill with a few units that are now completely isolated from the rest of their army. My horse archers really struggled to take down even those not very armoured looking enemy cavalrymen. Luckily we end up drawing them all the way up to our army. At this point we can shoot back at them with other stuff and that drives them away. But it does continue in this vein. They keep sending more and more stuff up to individually fight us. So this battle is going to just sort of begin in drips and drabs. Unfortunately for us, our AI companion controlling most of our army charges out. I switched there from defensive to shootout stance. I thought maybe shootout stance would persuade them to just stand still and shoot, like I was. But I think shootout stance is kind of like advance into shooting range as well, so it kind of prompts them to go forwards. I tried getting them back on defensive stance, but like we saw previously, once they've decided to aggro, they kind of just go for it. I was pretty annoyed at first, but then I thought, wait a minute, we actually should go for it because the enemy formation is spread across the entire map right now. So yes, let's actually attack them and kill some of these leading units before the rest of the stuff gets involved. And this is going to lead to an incredibly messy battle. Obviously the AI's strategies for using our troops will make it messy to begin with, but we're also going to be getting in on this by just charging all over the place. Here my general kind of stumbles into some heavy knights on foot. Going to get him out of there before he starts taking casualties. If we can shoot them, that should be fine. I'm trying to keep some semblance of a formation while the AI messes everything up. but I did pretty early on commit to just charging all over the place and trying to surround the blob immediately in front of us. That blob had loads of ranged units in it, so it was a nice target. And we do get results here. Mass routes occur, and our cav now run in amongst them, and you can see the capture thing in the bottom right is just shooting up. We're taking out loads of enemy troops, but it's only the beginning because those initial blobs were just a part of the enemy's force. Now more and more stuff keeps coming up this hill to join the fight, and it doesn't really ever look any cleaner. There's just stuff running all over the place in all directions. A vague front line is forming, but there's no order on that front line. It keeps disappearing as units move here and there. We're going to have trouble, as usual, with enemy heavy cav. Handily, a lot of our melee line are mercenary spearmen, so that's something. And we do have the gunners, but that's literally hit and miss. Usually they just don't even fire, so that's neither hit or miss, really. We need our AI to help us out with this because they've got more gunners, and they do have the grenadiers somewhere in their army as well. They're currently being very much pressured up there on our right. I'm going to send my general back to make a rear attack on the enemy's heavy cav blobs up there, trying to see if my gunners are doing very much. They're probably killing a few enemies. It's kind of hard to tell. There are multiple heavy cav units in front of them, and they're supposed to be shooting at them, but I suppose they don't hit very much, and it is also raining. That probably has some kind of puts a debuff on gunners. It doesn't say specifically what that might be, but you imagine there is one. Here my pistol cav shoot a volley at point blank range into the back of these enemy hussars, and it kills like one or two of them. Very ineffective. It does though hit them with the morale shock for being shot at, so that's something, and shortly afterwards they rout even at very high strength. So I guess this attack worked in the end, just not in the way I expected. The Blood Knights far out on the other vague flank are just killing everything. We've already committed to just having sacrifices in this battle because there's not that much else we can do. We need to lock the enemy down and try to kill them with ranged attacks. Obviously that only works for a limited time, and soon that time is over. Now the Blood Knights start charging towards the back and centre of our army, including the locations of the gunners. So we need to try and get them out of there if we can and find other distractions. Our AI companion is charging random stuff into the enemy's cav, so that's going to be a distraction, I suppose. There's also a battle going on elsewhere. We need to defeat the enemy's infantry, let alone the cavalry, so I need to spare a tiny bit of micro for trying to surround and pound some units. But there are lots of ranged units on the field today and lots of not particularly good units that have to fight uphill, so that's something in our favour. Our general nearly dies. I sent him off chasing those routed hussars from earlier, but he got caught by the enemy's general and bodyguard. Luckily I happened to notice just before he died. He's now going to go on a wild adventure around the battlefield to get to somewhere vaguely safe behind our army, but not really. We're trying to take a hold of these previously routed mounted archers and get them back into the fight in some way. In this case I noticed some Blood Knights are going after them, and I just thought, oh, forget giving them orders. They're dead. Let's go and give orders to something that might actually survive for more than a few seconds. We're trying to get these gunners to shoot into these melees against the heavy cav that are just sitting there killing us. Sometimes it happens, as far as I can tell. Although actually we can tell that one of our gun units isn't firing because its ammunition is still full. Usually in the chaos of micro I don't really notice that, but in retrospect obviously one unit's not doing their job. Still, the Native American style gunners managed to rout those Blood Knights once they finally come back for another go at us. So that's perfect. Now we'll set them to shooting at the nearby hussars as well. We also find the grenadiers finally getting in on the action somewhere. The enemy's general and bodyguard gets taken down a notch by our AI companion. Thank you very much for that. That's going to reduce enemy morale, of course, across the board. We're getting somewhere with this battle now. We're starting to win. The enemy are running out of troops to send up the hill at us, but still more are coming. Here comes another wedge heavy cav charge, obviously a very slow charge on this massive slope. The gunners next door are doing absolutely nothing, but our other gunners further up the hill are sniping away. That's enough to kill a few and rout the unit. That's what we like to see. My general nearly dies again to the exact same thing as earlier. Obviously that's a winning strategy, just snipe my general while I'm trying to film something elsewhere on the battlefield. Luckily we do get away again. All of the bodyguards are dead, but the general is just about alive there. And we do win the battle from here because everything is dead or routing. We chase them for a while, Here's the eventual result. It actually went a bit better than it kind of felt like it went during the fight. We lost less than half of our army, and our AI companion lost less than a quarter. So pretty good stuff actually. We took them down more effectively than I figured, probably because that hill was giving us various advantages and the chaos of battle was reducing enemy morale more so than it was reducing our morale. Then though, right after that battle, it just kind of happens again, because the enemy have plenty more stuff around. They just send another couple of armies to come attack us. At least this time, we're controlling the main, bigger army, which might make things a bit nicer. Although the enemy have also brought a whole bunch of new heavy infantry units. The heavy cav seems to be not so much emphasized. Heavy infantry this time. Gonna have the same issue, our lack of armor piercing damage options will give the enemy the advantage in melee. Because of that, well, we'll just have to deal with it at the start of the next part.